Okay, let's jump right into this explainer because today we are fundamentally shifting how we look at prediction models. We're going to expose a widely accepted metric that might literally be bleeding your bankroll dry without you even realizing it. We're going to tear down the illusion of accuracy and figure out why calibration is actually your true edge. Right off the bat, this is the single most important question you can ask yourself. When your model says an event has a 70% chance of happening, do those events actually occur 70% of the time? Not is the favorite usually right, and not are my top picks profitable overall. No, this specific question is what separates real, tradable, mathematically sound models from, well, mere marketing theater. We've got a lot of fascinating ground to cover today, so here's our roadmap. We'll start with the myth of accuracy, move into expected calibration error, look at the isotonic regression fix, tackle miscalibration in the wild, and wrap it all up with the true edge formula.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the myth of accuracy. Just picture this classic NBA thought experiment. Imagine you have two identical models that are both exactly 65% accurate. They both pick the favorite to win every single time, and the favorite wins 65% of the time. But look at their confidence levels. Model A is drastically overconfident. It claims a 70% probability for an event that only happens 65% of the time. Now, Model B is underconfident, claiming only a 53% probability for that exact same 65% frequency. So purely from an accuracy standpoint, these two models look completely identical, but mathematically, they are totally different animals.
And here is why that matters for your money. If you're sizing your positions using something like a Kelly fraction against that overconfident Model A, your math inherently assumes that 70% probability is the absolute truth. When it's not, your sizing fraction is just mathematically wrong. You're going to systematically overbet, and the variance will ultimately destroy your bankroll. On the flip side, if you use Model B, you're leaving tons of money on the table. Basically, accuracy without calibration is a massive trap. Which brings us to a new paradigm in Section 2, Expected Calibration Error. Enter Expected Calibration Error, or ECE for short. This is the magic property that turns a raw, highly dangerous probability into an actual trading instrument you can trust. Think of ECE as taking all your predictions, sorting them into buckets based on what your model claimed the probability was, and then measuring how far off each bucket was from actual reality. Then you just take a weighted average of those errors based on the number of predictions in each bucket. It really is the ultimate metric of honesty. Let's make that super concrete. Say you take all the predictions your model made that claimed a 55 to 60% probability. You look at reality, and it turns out those events actually happened 58% of the time. Boom, congratulations, that bucket is perfectly well calibrated. But what if those events only happened 46% of the time? Well, you instantly see a massive 12-point miscalibration. By grouping your predictions like this, you immediately see exactly where your model is lying to you. Now, to give you a real-world benchmark to aim for, our source data cites an NCAA men's basketball model tested across over 5,000 games. It actually achieved an ECE of 4.39%. In a true production environment, an ECE under 5% is fantastic. It's mathematically safe to size against using Kelly criteria. But anything creeping above 7%, that's getting dangerous. So 4.39% is a fantastic real-world number you can actually anchor your strategy to.
Okay, so how do we fix a broken model? Let's move to Section 3, the isotonic regression fix.
The really frustrating problem with raw machine learning models, and it doesn't matter if you're using XGBoost, neural networks, or whatever else, is that they are simply not naturally calibrated. If you peek behind the curtain, you'll see they systematically distort probabilities by aggressively pushing them towards 0 and 1. This produces intense overconfidence right in the middle ranges. So even if their overall accuracy looks fantastic on paper, the specific probabilities they spit out are structurally dishonest. The silver bullet here is a post-processing technique called isotonic regression. It works like this. After your raw model makes a guess, you pass that raw probability through an isotonic calibrator that's been trained on a held-out dataset. We're mathematically forcing the model to be honest. And isotonic regression relies on one incredibly safe assumption, that higher raw probabilities should equal higher true probabilities. It just sorts the data to find the closest non-decreasing mapping. This fixes those complex miscalibrations without accidentally memorizing noise or overfitting your data. It's brilliant. But the real world is messy, which brings us to Section 4, miscalibration in the wild. Look, a model calibrated perfectly on last season's data might be completely broken this season. Calibration goes stale because the world constantly changes. Rules evolve, rosters shake up, markets adapt. Out in production, this staleness typically shows up in three really dangerous patterns. First, you've got monotonic overconfidence across the board, where your whole curve is just shifted outward to the extremes. Second is localized miscalibration, where the model is just wildly wrong in one specific bucket, usually at the extreme edges where data is super rare. And third, the scariest one, sudden drift emerging from real-world changes.
Luckily, to combat that sudden drift, we don't just set our calibration and cross our fingers. We use a simple live recalibrator loop. Every single time a market resolves, the actual outcome and the model's prediction get immediately fed back into a rolling buffer of, say, the last 500 resolved trades. The system constantly refits that isotonic mapping based purely on this recent buffer. It's elegantly simple. There's no overly complex online learning that risks overcorrecting on noise. It's just a mechanical, reliable process keeping the numbers brutally honest. Let's pull this all together in our final section. Section 5, the true edge formula. A perfectly calibrated model is actually pretty useless on its own if the broader market consistently moves against it. Think about it like this. Calibration proves the model isn't lying about itself, but closing line value, or CLV, proves the model is right about the world. These are literally two halves of the exact same puzzle. If you have CLV without calibration, sure, you have an edge, but you can't properly size your bets because your magnitudes are completely wrong. You absolutely have to have both to survive. Which builds into the ultimate equation you need to remember. Calibrated probability multiplied by positive closing line value equals compounding edge. Anything else is just noise and theater. This right here is the only combination that produces real, sustainable, compounding returns in a live production environment. So, if you're building a system right now, there are three non-negotiable rules based on everything we've just covered. Number 1, always include an isotonic calibration step in your pipeline. Number 2, measure your expected calibration error on a rolling basis, so you catch invisible drift before it hurts you. And number 3, treat raw model outputs merely as an internal detail. The calibrated probability is the absolute only number your downstream logic, like your Kelly sizing or your stop-loss thresholds, should ever actually see. We've seen today that an uncalibrated model might look amazingly profitable in a backtest, but it will absolutely bleed you dry in production. So it's a bit of a terrifying but necessary thought to end on. If calibration is the silent killer of bankrolls, what is your model actually whispering to you right now? Is it telling you the mathematical truth, or is it just an illusion? Make absolutely sure your models are mathematically honest before you ever trust them with your capital. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you on the next one.